Hey there, my name is Gene Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. Today's episode is about the resurgence of Native American food. Now, every once in a while, I like to tell people what I'm attempting to do here, and it's this. This show is primarily aiming to find current news or trends in nutrition, sustainable eating, or stress reduction that are important but confusing or controversial. I will rearrange the information in a way to make it clear and relevant, hopefully. Today I'm discussing an emerging trend in Native American cooking. But first, I want to bring to your attention a recent article in The Guardian about imitation meat products. I'll leave the link in the show notes to the article. Most of us have heard of the meat alternative called Beyond Meat. Investors were all in during the rollout of this new product. There was a big advertising push, and a lot of people tried it. But recently sales have slowed, and the rollout of the McDonald's McPlant Burger and Burger King's Impossible Burger have sizzled and then fizzled. In my opinion, there were basically two problems with this approach. The marketers were focused on changing the minds of meat eaters, so they imitated the Big Mac and the Whopper. Those meat eaters have said in recent polls, if I'm going to spend money on a burger and I like meat, why wouldn't I just get the meat? The second issue is that the calories and saturated fat in both of those fast food meatless products were similar to the original. Should we be surprised that the products did not do that well? In my opinion, we shouldn't have tried to imitate the flavor of meat. Instead, maybe make a completely different tasting round thing that fits in a sesame seed bun. Why not maybe mushrooms, beets, or black beans? I'm guessing that no one asked a dietitian or nutritionist for their opinion, or a chef for that matter. They may have designed a delicious tasting mushroom burger. Okay, so on to the subject of the episode. I was just sent an article from the New Yorker magazine about a new trend in the indigenous or Native American cuisine. I thought it would be interesting to talk about this because it combines two of my favorite topics, history and food. Someone once asked me what Native Americans ate, and I had to ponder this for a second. I think I responded by saying that it was probably pretty close to Mexican cuisine without the dairy, but that was just a guess. I imagine they ate a lot of corn and beans, and we know that they hunted. But beyond that, I didn't have a clue. So I read the article and dug up some material. I was actually surprised at the variety of food they ate, and discouraged to find out that the colonists used starvation to kill natives and take their land. I don't believe that was in our history books. At school, we learned about the Thanksgiving dinner they had with the turkey and all the fixins. I'm not sure about the gravy boat, but at that time, they maybe ate sweet potatoes, turnips, squashes, and of course corn. Those were the early days when everybody got along relatively well, although not perfectly. I'm guessing that when we were told in school about the first Thanksgiving between Native Americans and the Puritans, they may have rounded up the happiness factor. Even by that time, in Massachusetts and Virginia, natives were dying from European diseases and slaughter. Now, I know a lot of you know this history, but bear with me. In 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, about 145 million people lived in the Western Hemisphere. By 1692, the population of indigenous Americans had declined by 90 to 95%, or by about 130 million people. So by 1692, the year of the Salem witch hysteria, there were only 15 million Native Americans left in the Western Hemisphere. Many of them died from diseases like smallpox, but also many were driven from their lands or captured and enslaved until their deaths. As for a comparison, a total of 19 people were killed during the entire Salem witch hysteria. So 19 people versus 130 million people killed. Big difference. Fast forward to July 1776, when the colonists decided that they wanted their independence from King George of England. Then things got very complicated. The Massachusetts Bay Colony, that would be us, recruited Native Americans to fight on the side of the colonists. I'm not sure that they asked politely, but some did go. Some natives may have thought to themselves, hold on, if we fight on England's side, maybe the British will get rid of these interlopers. So some of the Native Americans went to war on the British side. I'm guessing that didn't go over well. In 1779, George Washington ordered an offensive against the Iroquois Confederacy, writing, quote, "It will be essential to ruin their crops now in the ground and prevent their planting more." End quote. Now, most of us know about the Trail of Tears when Andrew Jackson ordered natives to march west to Oklahoma from as far east as Florida, and thousands died in that death march. And I certainly don't mean to suggest that we don't know the extent of the cruelty. We do. But I was surprised to read that George Washington was the first president to order the massacre of natives by starvation. They burned their crops and killed the bison. I think it is human nature for us to need to separate good and evil, like we're separating our laundry baskets into lights and darks. George Washington, in fact, did own slaves and ordered the massacre of Native Americans. Did he belong in the evil basket? No. He was a complex individual. Let's just leave it at that. Over the following years, after 1779, colonists systemically hunted American bison, cutting off the source of food and basic livelihood of the natives, and causing their death from starvation in large numbers. Statistics reveal that since its independence in 1776, the United States government has launched over 1,500 attacks on Indian tribes, slaughtering the Indians, taking their lands, and committing countless atrocities. That was a quote from the New Yorker article, and I'll give you a link in the show notes. Here's another quote. In 1814, the U.S. government decreed that it would award $50 to $100 for each Indian skull surrendered to the government. Not to be outdone, here comes Andrew Jackson. He forced more than 125,000 people from the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole nations to walk to present-day Oklahoma along the Trail of Tears. Thousands died of starvation or literally marched until they dropped dead. Native Americans were then herded onto reservations and penned in. They couldn't hunt and couldn't grow crops because this was pre-irrigation days and they were given desert land for the most part. The corn, beans, and squashes that natives were accustomed to growing require lots of water. They were given rations, which contained a lot of flour and butter, two staples that the Native Americans had never seen before. Then in the 20th century, natives were given a lot of processed foods that their bodies were just not accustomed to, and they began to suffer from diabetes and obesity. No surprise there. Now fast forward to the present. There was an article in the New Yorker about the best new restaurant in the United States. It is a restaurant in the Midwest run by a Native American that serves exclusively Native American food. there has recently been a renewed interest in Native American cooking, and it has become a cool thing to be 100% Native American. I'll just tell you this one quick story, and then we'll get back to the cuisine. I remember decades ago when I was at college in upstate New York, specifically in Ithaca, New York, at the base of Lake Cayuga, and the college was Cornell. I was sitting in the cafeteria in Stocking Hall, where I took most of my classes. Sitting at the table were mostly nutrition and food science majors, but the cafeteria was open to anyone from the college. Someone at my table pointed to a very handsome young man and said, "He's 100% Native American." Now, he wasn't just good looking. He was JFK Jr. good looking. So we all oohed and ahed, and someone said that they would like to mate with him. Or she may have said date him. Let's just go with that. But then someone else said, but if you have kids, your kids will be only 50% Native American. With that, we all fell silent. Now, ultimately, I believe some good will eventually come of all this when we all see our skin color as shades of pantyhose. But it made us sad at the time. The colonists had succeeded in eliminating an entire race of Native Americans on the mainland United States. There are still plenty of indigenous people in Hawaii and Alaska, but they are a rare sighting in New York. Maybe we won't be able to bring back the genetic purity of a race that we massacred, but can we bring back their cuisine? Well, of course we can, because we know what they ate. This new exclusive restaurant served many items we would recognize today. One dish on the menu had duck eggs, microgreens, and blueberries. There was another, which was a cedar braised bison with maple flavoring and a berry sauce. Also, smoked trout from Lake Superior was on the menu. It was served with flame-broiled sweet potatoes drizzled with chili oil. A local wild rice called Manoomin, I hope I'm saying that right, that is grown in the Midwest today, was also on the menu. Right now, you can easily order long grain and wild rice on Amazon, and it works well with root vegetables in the fall. We all know that Native Americans hunted bison as far east as New York, and that can be found on the restaurant menu. But natives also hunted elk, antelope, pheasant, and deer. Native Americans ate all kinds of fish, depending on where they were, obviously. Cod has been plentiful off the east coast of Massachusetts for hundreds of years, but bottom feeders like crab and lobster were also fished. In most places in North America, corn, beans, and the squashes were staples for native tribes. In addition to those crops, natives found wild rice from the Midwest, as I've mentioned, potatoes, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, duck and quail eggs. And just as an off note, because ducks and quails can fly, unlike our chickens, they had to be penned in. Therefore, farm animals. They harvested honey and a variety of nuts. Cranberries, strawberries, blueberries, and wild plums were popular fruits. Other root vegetables, like turnips, were plentiful, and even some leafy greens were grown by Native Americans. So there you have it. A great variety of food was eaten by our wannabe ancestors in this country. So this native chef in the Minneapolis area by the name of Sean Sherman is showing us that living off the land can be pretty darn delicious. And from the looks of things, pretty nutritious as well. If you want to include some Native American food for your boring weekday suppers, shoot for Mexican without the cheese. I'll end with a quote from Sean Sherman from this New Yorker article. Quote, "In Minneapolis, I could find food from all over the world, but nothing that represented the food or the people that were there before, which is completely insane." End quote. Well, Sean, we hear your battle cry. Now that's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next week for another episode of Healing Outside the Box.